Folks, welcome to an episode of The Artenders with Mac and Dan. I am Dan, he is Mac.
Howdy.
This time, we are doing a movie that I selected as we're, jamming in the back, on video. Anybody on video can see this. Anybody who's listening, theater of the mind. But for this week, it was a movie that I selected. And I'm interested in your, preliminary thoughts when it came to consuming this movie. But
more importantly,
it is a classic film that I selected. One from 1943, starring Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. It is a movie called Casablanca. Of all the gin joints in all the world, oh, she comes into mine. Oh!
Look at you, White House.
I honestly also messed up the quote. But you know what? We're going to keep rolling this time. This totally isn't the second time that we're recording this. No, sir. No. Mac, a big reason why I wanted to pick this movie, not only because I think it's great, not only because I think it holds up, but primarily because I have a story to tell in regards to my relationship with this movie.
Oh.
And I think it's just a very, very funny, sort of, not funny in terms of haha, but just like a ha.
I'll make sure to respond accordingly then, Danny.
So my senior year of high school, when after we had taken all of the advanced placement tests, so basically at that point of the year, between you taking the AP test and you actually graduating, if those classes are just AP classes, then there's no point to showing up.
Right.
So that's exactly what I did one day. So one day, I just skipped school for the most part.
Wow, nice.
In the theater, right? In the theater on campus at school. And I brought my computer. I brought my computer, and I was like, I want to watch a movie today. And for some reason, I was like, you know what? I think this is finally the time I'm going to watch this movie because now I may be, getting the name of this wrong, but at Hollywood Studios at Disney, formerly called MGM, they have this ride. I think it's called the Great Movie Ride, and it played now or before it shut down. It played like certain, movie quotes and movie snippets and stuff like that throughout the ride. But when I was younger, they would mostly play clips from Casablanca. And I was just...
Mostly?
But those were the ones that stuck out to me aside from Gone with the Wind.
And you knew it was Casablanca at the time.
And I always have been fascinated by this movie. And I'm like, this movie has been around for such a long time. It must be fantastic. So I watched it that day, my senior year. And what was funny was that I started watching this movie just on my little rinky-dinky computer by myself. Eventually, over time, and the movie's only an hour and a half long. Over time, people were coming up to me, hey, what are you watching? Hey, what are you watching? Hey, what are you watching? I'm watching Casablanca. And then they're like, okay, and they have nothing else better to do, so then they sit next to me. And so when I started the movie, it was just me watching it. When I finished the movie, it was like 10 of us in the dressing room, huddled around my computer and just biting our nails because we were mystified by the fact of this movie's fantastic and we have no idea why.
Yeah.
We could not, didn't really understand what was happening to us until we looked around and were like, holy shit, we're all just deep in this movie all of a sudden.
Do you think that was because you weren't expecting it? Or do you think that was because you did not have the vocabulary at the time to articulate why the movie was so good?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? I think I have a better understanding of how this movie is constructed and the pacing of it now, as well as the acting, and it's just it's most certainly a product of its time. Of course, it being set in World War II and an owner of the bar that is called Rick's and the titular character is Rick, and he helps two people try to get out of this sort of neutral town. But one of those two people is a long-lost lover that he hasn't seen in many, many years. So we were just fascinated because I think that was probably for all of us in that room the oldest movie that we had seen. So it was, because for any of us, like probably the oldest movie that any of us has seen was probably like in the 70s at most, right?
Sure.
The 1970s.
Sure.
But then watching this, it was just fascinating, not because we thought the movie was going to be bad, but we didn't know how good it could be, right? Considering that it's damn near now like a century old, that we were just mystified of like, oh man, like this movie can be that great. Movies from this time can be that great in its storytelling and its execution, even though it had a much more difficult time just trying to put things up. And that was the most fascinating part really about it for us. Now, Mac, this is when I ask you, what were your first thoughts on the movie? Did you hear of the movie before I brought it up last time?
Of course, you kidding? Of course. Well, this is the thing. Casablanca, the reason that it's so interesting and the reason that it's in the center of the zeitgeist, and it has been
the center.
Truly, I think so. Yeah, and it's been that way for so dang long is because whenever you look up, tells you a lot about the types of people we are. But being theater people, being people that want to make stories, whenever you're growing up, you don't know much about it, so you Google, right? And whenever you Google, what's the best movie of all time? Because I want to make sure that I'm watching the best stuff possible.
If it's not like in that top 10 list, it's basically between like Casablanca or Citizen Kane.
Yep,
and if not those two, then like Shawshank Redemption or
maybe The Godfather's in there somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but like it's always between Casablanca, Citizen Kane, Citizen Kane. And so whenever I was younger, I watched both several times.
Wow.
But purely because
you've already seen Casablanca
a bunch of times.
I didn't know that.
Purely because I was interested, right? And so I was always way more of a fan of Casablanca than I was Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane, the artistic elements kind of seem to slap you over the head a little bit. Yeah. Like even whenever I was younger, I was like, okay, that's kind of a lot. But Casablanca is very subtle about its artistry.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that it does that are really tiny but so effective. But the main thing is that over the summers, my mom worked in the summers, and my dad didn't know what to do with us because that's a lot of time to be alone with 4 kids. Yeah. And so he would send us to our grandmother's house, and that's all we did.
He would just make it somebody else's problem.
Yeah, he really would. He would just be like, okay, and bye. And so our thing to do with our grandmother was always watch movies, whether that be in the movie theater or like she spent most of her money on all of us going to see the movies in the movie theater. But over those summers, we would have movie marathons that I'm not even shitting you, like a week long, every single day for a week, like watching 4 or 5 movies a day. And I learned a lot, but got a huge knowledge of classic movies. Did I understand all of them at the time? No. Did I fall asleep during 10 to 20% of them? Of course.
Yeah.
But because I was a kid. But I did gain a huge knowledge, and that really came with Casablanca. Casablanca was a big eye-opener for me because
even when you were younger.
Yeah, but purely because even though I didn't know anything about storytelling or anything artistically, any film things they're doing, acting, anything like that, she set up a really, really awesome frame for us, which is this. And I realized this after I've shown a lot of people, because I've shown a lot of people this movie. It's true.
I mean, it's a great movie.
It's a great movie.
Like, it's funny to think about, right? Like, you know what we're going to do tonight?
Casablanca, right. It's just, it feels pretentious. But I have shown people this movie, and the problem is that by itself, if you don't know the context in which the movie takes place, it's purely, it's just not impactful.
I'm interested. Okay, I want to pick at that because I do feel like, so the movie even opens with narration about the town of Casablanca, right? Yeah. And that the movie does the sort of thing of providing even more a little bit of like narration / exposition of like mini scenes, vignettes with some other characters talking about like the going-ons right around them. Going-ons. But
that's good.
And for the most part, like, it's set during World War II, and I think a lot of us have at least a decent enough understanding of World War II to understand conceptually what is happening on screen. So I'm curious about, like, were there people then that you knew that, like, were just not picking up on what was going on?
Or not really. The main thing is,
because the movie does move fast, but I don't think it moves too fast.
There's a huge difference between a movie being about World War II made nowadays and a movie made about World War II
during
World War II's happening,
which is, like, I mean, I would say, like, insane to think, but, like, that's not, we still kind of do that while countries are in war. They'll make a film in regards to said war.
Yeah, or like, right. I mean, I guess technically Lady Macbeth, whenever we saw this, or Siberian Lady Macbeth, but also, like, that as the tragedy is happening, that's the best time for the art to strike.
Yeah.
For sure. Which is why it's always interesting to see, what tragedy is around us and what's picking up. Like, whenever stuff like Get Out or This Is America comes out, and the reason it blows up so fast is because you realize, the main thing happening in America right now, at least, or at that time, was struggles with Black Lives Matter. But with this, it's the exact same thing, which is once you realize that this movie is being released as people, especially Americans are struggling with World War II. And also in 1943, whenever we are still trying to figure out if we are supposed to, as America, go over and help in World War II.
Yeah.
That really changes the entire movie.
Yeah.
Because then it starts to become really, really vividly clear. I remember being like 12 and knowing perfect clarity because my grandmother explained it to us that Rick was America. That, like, he was the neutral. He was the he was the person that was a romantic and is now like a cynic.
I didn't realize how symbolic the film was.
Incredibly. And it's a pretty good movie by itself.
Yeah.
But, like, you understand why everyone says it's one of the best movies of all time, top 2, whenever you realize how big of a fucking deal it was to these people,
Yeah.
That, or like whenever you look at Victor Laszlo being, like, kind of, the representation of Britain, that he's like this literal gleaming beam of hope, in that, like, every time you see him on screen, he has specifically different lighting than every other character. Like, his face and his body is
bright,
lit up. Yeah. Because he's a literal beam of hope.
I didn't even think about that, but Victor Laszlo, I mean, this movie is in black and white, but Victor Laszlo is it's bright on screen.
Yeah.
Every single time.
This is, and I don't say this lightly, out of all the black and white movies that I've seen, it is the
Sizzle
Surf. Yep, this is Sizzle Surf. Get ready.
All right, we've laid the foundation.
This is the only black and white movie that I've ever seen that is truly aware of the fact that it's black and white and uses that.
Oh, okay. That is a sizzle serve. I feel like
I'm gonna say.
Okay, hold on. Well, I do feel like
of the time period that you had to make black and white movies.
Sure,
because there have been black and white movies that have been made since that have used it, obviously. But in that time, there was no,
like, the 40s and 50s, like, primarily.
Yes, like 30s, 40s, 50s.
I feel like we gotta watch more Kurosawa then, because
sure.
He directed Seven Samurai, and remember, like, the movement in that film. Like, it's just. I'm literally at a loss of words, which is not good for an audio medium.
No.
But how he constructs movement on screen just for that film, and I've seen, like, clips here and there of some of his other films, and it's just the movement on screen that it kind of, like, it goes past black and white, and so but I think I understand what you're saying, that it's sort of like it's not the black and white in Casablanca is not any sort of detriment at all.
No, they use it.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest difference, is because Seven Samurai overcomes the fact that it's black and white, whereas Casablanca uses the fact that it's black and white.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you there.
I think that this movie and a lot of the choices that specifically the cinematographer Arthur Edison made were involving the fact that it was black and white. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, if this movie wasn't in black and white, then all of the cinematography approaches would have been lost. Which I think is a huge A++ for the movie. And that really, that helped me out a lot. And was super impressive. But yeah, the framework of the movie being the symbolism, Laszlo being this, beam of hope, whereas Rick is this neutral. Am I supposed to be involved? I would rather be in the neutral. Like the reason that he is there in Morocco is because he's specifically electing to be neutral.
Yeah.
He is allowing for Sam
town.
to come and play piano for him and serve Nazis, because he does not want to be involved, because he is too tired and too cynical to be involved.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't give a shit about anyone, which is kind of where America was.
Well, and because he got so weathered down by everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, I really like Rick a lot
Yeah.
as a kid, not just fundamentally as a character, and it's a treat to watch him progress, right? I think one of my favorite moments in the film was his scene with the Bulgarian girl. Mm-hmm. First of all, it was also just a greatly written scene, how she never says it explicitly, but how you're able to figure out in the scene, oh, you're sleeping with the French captain on the chance of you and your husband getting out of Casablanca, right?
Yep.
And so how that scene is just textually constructed.
Oh yeah.
Great, right? But then it's also when he makes that choice to actually help her as opposed to helping anybody else, it's a huge deal. It sort of ripples out to everyone around him. And so I think that's probably another thing that the movie does so well, is that it feels like the choices that these characters make also really matter, and not only matter to just them themselves, but also to the people around them. I think it's a genuinely very nice treat that the movie does. I'm trying to you know what? I'm just gonna, because we're also on video, and I feel like I have to acknowledge this. I'm trying to indicate to Mac that I don't even know how long we've been recording.
We got 2 minutes left.
All right, terrific.
No, we got time.
Candid.
What do you say? Candid.
Candid. We're just being candid.
Absolutely.
We're being candid, and sometimes we gotta let them peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And just see
on that
bit.
By the way, I just want to point out that my personal gold medal for the past week, not Casablanca, just life gold medal, was Danny in preparing for us to transition to the film medium. We both needed 2 microphones to be spread out enough for the actual camera.
Yes.
And he made a version of yes, with the YouTube tutorial, but he made a version of Audacity on his
The code
computer.
was written for me. I just had to run some commands.
But just the idea that it wasn't that you downloaded a new Audacity, it was that you constructed a new Audacity.
I wish it was that easy. It was crazy. But,
But anyway, sorry, that was impressive. No, but on your point that the way the characters aided each other and especially the small characters.
Well, because it also painted the setting.
Yes.
In that regard.
Oh, it did. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, because it also it takes me to the very beginning of the film. I was it was a very specific choice. Instead of the movie doing the stereotypical thing of wide shots to establish scenery, to establish the scene and the setting.
Yeah.
Instead, what the movie did was, in order to paint the setting, they would actually just have very, very tiny little small dialogue scenes with other characters in the space. Not relevant to the actual fundamental core plot that's going on. But what that does, it actually paints a much more specific picture into the environment that they're actually living in because of the specificity of it. It's when it's a wide shot of the bustling of a shopping center, and there's a little bit of that, but when the movie also makes a choice to have those scenes, then you also know what's at stake for the people. You know what's at stake for the people living there, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to make up something in your head, you see it. Yeah. It's making those specific choices for those people there, as opposed to, okay, you're just like walking to work, right? Like, no, like in just these few scenes, we're gonna paint super duper vivid pictures. And so then we actually understand the stakes of the environment, and then how the environment is and how it functions to the main characters at hand.
That's interesting.
Which makes me fascinated, because I watched that and I was like, this feels so archaic, because I feel like, and I may fall into this trap too of criticizing the film because you're not sticking to the plot, or you're not sticking to the central conflict when you are like focusing on like tiny little characters for like 2 seconds, right? But at the same time, it totally sort of feeds into the central conflict, because it paints what's going on around the central conflict, and really constructing what's at play, in the spine of the central conflict, which I find to be fascinating. And then I find furthermore to be fascinating that nobody, or at least I personally haven't seen anything outside of this movie that does that.
Yeah.
At all.
That's a very good point. That you don't necessarily
You're almost there.
Yeah, sorry. I blanked for a sec. You don't need to actually be watching the central conflict to be learning about the central conflict.
Yeah.
That's something that's often lost on us, because we're so obsessed and so focused on conflict. Yeah. We're so obsessed and focused on protagonist and character and arc that this is one of the few movies that makes it really clear that we can trust it enough, to stray away from the central conflict and to know that we're still getting plenty about it. Yeah. Like those small scenes with random people, although not entirely random, that really do represent really interesting things for the characters and show you a lot about them. Like, for instance, those people at the very, very, very beginning. I don't remember if you remember them. That there was this couple at the very beginning that like a plane took off and they were like, we're going to be on that plane, right? Yeah. Remember them? And then later on, they're the ones that are in trouble at the bar.
Oh,
fucking forgot about that, right?
I didn't even.
They're the ones at the bar, and they're the ones that Rick is helping. They're the hopefuls. They're the romantics.
No way.
And they're the ones.
That's the Bulgarian girl and the husband.
And he is, and that is.
I have no idea.
Yeah, and like them being the representation of like young romantic hope, and that's the very first hint that you get that is actually what Rick is at his core.
Well, what's like what I really enjoy about the film too is that it works beyond the symbolism of it. Like the symbolism of that
is interesting.
Aids it.
Yes.
But then it's also the storytelling element of the couple at the very beginning looking at that plane, seeing it take off, and then being able to be the ones to make Rick into the more sentimentalist that Renault, accuses him of potentially being. Right. That's just, it's odd. I hate to do this, but I love to do this. It kind of reminds me of The Wire. Or like some television too, where it's just like some small characters that they just reappear. There's this one character that's only in like 3 scenes throughout 3 seasons, and it's this girl who like starts buying drugs, and then she's a girl in like the last season that talks at the service that Bubbles goes to, right? Yeah. But it's like it's a small thing like that, like. It's really painted the picture of all these people have their own stories. All these people have their own lives. It's a lot more interesting to watch something on screen of people going through shit as opposed to just a general broad brush. Right. Well, like why don't we take that magnifying glass?
That's true. There's something really, really fascinating that someone pointed out to me a while back, and I think it really highlights that idea of lots of small characters and not but really careful examinations of small characters. Yeah. In that most of the characters you see throughout the entire movie. They're, like, you see them several times, but in terms of arc, in terms of change, in terms of growth for each character, other than Rick and Ilsa, every other character gets one scene.
Yeah. Oh, one scene. What, in terms of change, or
they have one major scene in which you find out who they are, what they wanted, and how they're changing.
Yeah, I think
like all of, like, and once you start thinking about it, you're like, damn, it really, every one of the main characters. Like Sam, yes,
they
of
all
course
have.
He's playing.
There's like a moment where they have to make a choice.
Right. That, like, Sam, you see him playing the piano in the bar, and then obviously he plays piano for Ilsa and Rick whenever they're having their conversation and everything. But Sam only has one scene, and it's the scene where he confronts Rick, or like what's in there, Ferrari or Carl. That all these people have one real scene.
Yeah. And sometimes, sure, maybe it's not even like a specific choice, but it's like it's something that they are like going through. When, like, Carl, for example, who's such a minor character, who's only in like 3-4 scenes throughout the movie, has this one beautiful scene where I believe like it's a German couple who has fled from Germany, and they were just able to get their tickets or visas or whatever it was / is to America, and they're like all congratulating each other, and like Carl sits there and like has a drink with them, and it's like this very funny moment because their English is very broken, the German couple, and then Carl's just watching that, but it's also like Carl is seeing a piece of his like country that he aligns himself with is able to get out of there, right? And just like structurally as a scene, right? It's little moments like that, and I think, yeah, and for a lot of the central characters, there is that beautiful progression, and sometimes you don't even expect it. And this is when I give my gold medal to Claude Rains's Renault, Louis Renault, the French police captain.
Yeah.
Person in charge.
Yeah.
Of the neutral city, and he actually, first of all, hilarious, like genuinely a funny person, and he also, he's giving me the timer, and he also like changes at the very end of the movie, and it's just a treat. Yeah. It's just a treat to watch development, not just for Rick and Ilsa, but also for the people around them, that the choices they made ripples out, and it's a beautiful sort of portrayal of the butterfly effect.
I would like to talk more about that, but also the play that this was based off of. Yes, sir. When we come back. All right, howdy and welcome back to The Artenders. So where we left off, we were talking about, that was a weird one, right? The intro?
Yes, but I mean, let's keep on trucking.
I liked it enough to keep going.
But I'm still mystified that there is a play.
There's a play, yeah.
Okay,
sure.
hold on. Time out. Was this play written before or after the movie?
Before.
So I'm shook.
Yeah, no, it's real. It's true. There was a play. It was not well received. Not a lot of people liked it very much. But there was a play that was written, but I think produced only for like a limited time. Like it was a very, I guess all productions are a limited time, but it was produced for only a few shows, and it is called what?
Well, no, I mean, Murray Burnett and Joan Allison.
Yep, and Joan Allison. They wrote "Everybody Comes to Rick's," and it's Casablanca, but it's not the same. I haven't read it personally, but I just know people that have, and I've like listened to plenty of people talk about it. But it's
superiorly worse.
Not really. It's not that much worse. It's just that it's not Casablanca, because Casablanca, I mean, the reason that the movie is so spectacular and so revered and such a big deal is because it's just a perfect mesh of a bunch of masters of whatever they do, all coming together to work on a project.
And like a little bit, like it's like slightly campy, but like it's also just
it's
raw.
Camp in all the right ways.
It's raw. It's like it's the tinge. It's a little dash of melodrama.
Yeah.
But it still has that like dramatic, like gaping hole of need for those people that it's exhilarating to watch, especially like with the caliber that is on screen.
Yeah.
For that,
it's corny, but I mean, it's kind of like one of the original cliches are cliches because they happen so often.
Yeah.
And this wasn't super cliche because it was one of the first to do all the things it did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's but every single person that worked on Casablanca knew exactly what the fuck they were doing, so, especially the creative team. Like every writer, because Casablanca the movie has 6 writers that were on that team. None of them. The 2 writers of the play, Joan Allison and Murray Burnett.
They're credited for writing the play, but they're not a part of the creative team for the movie.
Right?
Yep.
And so, I think that's actually more of a testament to it's not a matter of these geniuses. It is that a bunch of artists got together and all did a really fucking good job, you know?
Which is super tricky thing generally, because sometimes there are too many cooks in a kitchen, you know, but then there are some times where like you may have 6 to 8 writers in a room,
right?
And like something is fantastic. Unfortunately, it eludes me, but I feel like we have reviewed something that had a ridiculous amount of writers and it was an aggressively mediocre thing that we like watched.
I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, it's unfortunately eluding me, but like it's a really tricky thing. But then you still have like these writer rooms, right?
Yep.
You know, that has like multiple people, and it could be
like
super
Ralphie.
duper dangerous for the what?
I said like Ralphie.
Like who? Ralphie?
Yeah, Raphael.
Oh, yes, Ralphie. Yeah. Would you like to give context to that name?
Rafael Alvarez, our one of our interviews from last season.
Yes.
Well, you said writer's room, and that was the first one I thought of. You were talking about our old episodes, and I just reminisced about Rafael Alvarez.
Okay.
I totally agree with you there, and it is tricky, but I think that there's no such thing as too many cooks in the kitchen if
the kitchen is big enough.
Well, yeah, but if everyone if the kitchen is big enough.
You just dismissed that entirely.
No, that was good. I mean, I was just focused. It didn't hit me, but that's just that was the dumbest response, but that was pretty funny.
Too many writers, not bad if
they know exactly what story they're telling.
Yeah.
Everyone was focused. Everyone knew exactly what the thing they were making was going to be. This
wasn't some sort of devised piece. It was very, very specific. I mean, it was
devised piece meaning.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. A devised piece is like usually it's done as a piece of theater when probably a lot of time there isn't a director in the room, and instead it's a bunch of actors, but there isn't a script, and instead they kind of figure out and build the script together from nothing, and they just kind of work together, and they just sort of make something from nothing.
And devised theater is usually fantastic if the actors know what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, like the only times I've ever seen devised theater not work is whenever it was clear that they were on a different page and they didn't know exactly what they were trying to say. But whenever they do it, it really works out. And so, you're right. This is the exact same thing. That luckily, it's a matter of there was an original play. Mm-hmm. The play did not lack in clarity. Apparently, it knew exactly what it was trying to say. And once they gave this to a film director and a cinematographer and film actors, they all were able to add as much as they wanted to it, and the 6 writers were able to add as much as they want to it, all knowing full and well that if it didn't aid the specific message they were trying to send, then they were going to cut it, and if it did, then they were going to keep it, and that's that.
And it is immensely theatrical. That does translate to the screen. And honestly, I've always had a little bit of a soft spart. Yeah.
For Sparta. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. Oh God, I just choked on my own laugh.
Oh no.
Oh, and into the microphone. I feel like that's a fine. Sorry.
$100.
I do have a soft spot for movies that are sort of like structured theatrically.
Yeah.
And so my two
just in that it has long scenes, or
my two favorite Tarantino films are Reservoir Dogs and The Hateful Eight. The vast majority of those two films, they just take place in one space. You get some stuff outside of it, but it really focuses on Aristotle's three unities. I think I've alluded to this before, and I said three unities, and I held up two fingers like a fucking idiot. I am.
Three unities?
The three unities, dude. Peace. Where it's the unity of time, action, and place. Time, the unity of time, meaning that the course of the play or the movie only takes place in a 24-hour period. Action is that there's like only really one plot. There isn't any subplots. And then place, it all takes place in one place. And of course, like this movie and other movies sort of break out of that a little bit, but it's very, very tightly knit together.
Yeah.
And I've always sort of honestly been a pretty big fan of that because it really keeps everything in the moment for not only the actors but the characters as well, because it's just they are just directly playing off of what just went on. And it does also make the storytelling really, really tight, because when you're seeing something and something that happened an hour ago, happened to that character maybe like no more than 20 hours ago, right? But like I said, it aids to this film and it aids to the theatricality of it with, those little vignettes, those little scenes with those super duper minor characters, and the fact that like the vast majority of this movie only takes place inside of Rick's bar. And if not inside the bar, then upstairs where he lives. And if not there's like one other bar for like one scene, and then like the airport for the final scene.
Yeah.
That's the extent of it,
right.
For the most part.
I mean, you said something about, or like whenever we were talking about how it was a play, or whenever I heard it the first time that it was a play, I instantly knew exactly what the set looked like.
Yeah.
Like the movie doesn't really stray too much away from it in that aspect, because you're right, it is very central. It takes place in Rick's bar.
But then what also makes it really, really special is that even though it it does for the most part only take place mostly in Rick's bar, and then there is the central plot of what's happening between Rick, between Ilsa, and between Victor Laszlo, and sort of the Renault and Strasser. Outside of that, trying to like keep them in Casablanca, there is still that sort of space where you have Sam singing and playing on the piano. You have Sasha serving drinks. Carl is going out and delivering those drinks. And then his name escapes me, but the guy who's also running the gambling tables, right? Like those things are still sort of going on, and even though they're not like central to the plot at hand, they make sure to put those scenes in there. So like not only are you getting the space spatially, but you're also, I know it's a bit redundant, but you're also getting the space in terms of like the character, the literal character of the space and the kind of people that inhabit the space. I think like that's really important, not only to the storytelling but also like just getting attached to like what that place is to a lot of people. And the fact that, the bartender is Russian and the waiter who's delivering those drinks is German, and the guy who owns the entire bar is American, and while serving drinks to Frenchmen and Moroccans, like there's so much eclectic nature that it's just a wonderful little melting pot. It's just a treat. It's just a treat how they construct that space with its storytelling. I think is the big thing I want to hit home with.
The music was also extremely influential. I mean, obviously it's just nostalgic, and it's very, like the quintessential classic movie music.
Yeah.
But also, how did you feel about the scene where they were the band was competing with the soldiers?
I think that was a scene, to be specific. There are German Nazis on one side of the bar, and one of them gets on the piano and they start playing I presume to be their national anthem. And then all of a sudden Victor Laszlo, just in a fury, goes over to the trumpeter saying, "You play the French anthem right now." And then they on the other side of the bar, and really mostly everybody in the bar, sing and overpower the Nazis singing their anthem.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that was when the symbolism of the movie hit the hardest, right? It was most certainly heavy-handed, but it wasn't overdone.
It wasn't tacky, yeah.
It wasn't tacky at all. It made perfect sense
yeah.
in terms of the context of what was going on and what was happening, for these characters, and how real that was to them. How important that was to sing their anthem, have it be their own sort of their own revolution in that tiny bar in Casablanca, Morocco. That was their own time to have that space. And I think it was like I said, even though it was heavy-handed, it was a beautiful moment. I think it also does sort of remind me of something that our junior year acting professor would tell us. Bernard was his name. That he would, and it still is his name. He hasn't changed it, by the way, if anybody was curious.
Archie.
Maybe we said too much now.
Oh, man.
He said his first name. Oh,
Social Security number, 324? No. I know his Social Security number.
That he would tell us consistently in class, these people's lives, in terms of, characters and plays and anything, these people's lives are bigger than yours. And god damn it, how every single one of those actors plays those characters is exactly as if Bernard was.
Yeah.
Floating head was there giving notes off camera. It's these people's lives are bigger because it's also it's part of it too is still the setting of they've made this hotbed of need. They've made this hotbed of high stakes for everyone. And so it's this natural hotbed of there's a Nazi at the other side of the bar, and we are currently, and when I say we, I mean whatever country, I'm aligned with, we are currently at war with them, and I can't do shit about it. Because it's just a neutral town. And so they made this hotbed. And so when they make that scene, when they make them singing the anthem, it's a genuinely beautiful and sort of tender moment that's super important for so many of those characters, which then leads into the funniest scene in the entire movie, which was Renault trying to find a reason to shut down the bar, him saying, "I can't believe you've done gambling," and then you have the guy running roulettes come up to Renault, say, "Here's your winnings, sir, thank you," and then, they just progress through the scene, which is such a beautiful little moment, one tiny moment which is hilarious and encapsulates Renault perfectly, talking out of both sides of his mouth. I'm sorry, I was about to cut you off with whatever you were about to say.
No, I was I was at breakfast with a couple friends recently over in Fort Worth, and as I was sitting there talking to them, they also went to some theater program in the Midwest. I think it was in Missouri, and they were talking about how they they regretted their education. They regretted their a lot of musical theater people especially hate their college education because which is super sad. And the more I talked to these people, every time I say the same thing, which is like, well, I'm really sorry about your experience, but I really loved mine, and I think I got a lot from it.
I'm sorry you had a shitty one. Mine was great. Let's talk about me, guys.
No. And
about me.
I mean, the reason that is because I told them it's two things. First of all, I knew exactly what I wanted when I was going to college, and I feel like I got that. But the other big thing is that there were a few, not a lot, but a few professors that were really trustworthy. And I just remembered Bernard, that he's really one that stands out, you know, that, I mean, they were talking about how, this guy made them watch,
Cats.
5 different versions of Hamlet. And I'm like, okay, interesting. Like we kind of did a similar thing with Michael.
With our senior year where we watched, I think it was only 4, but like 4 different versions of Macbeth, correct?
And and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then how they ended up using it was like in some sort of like improv where you had to like use the different people's interpretations of Hamlet to like almost like mimicking them for like an improv game. And I was just kind of confused, and they were like, it was the dumbest thing, and it was super sad. But yeah. And then I told them I was like, well, Bernard was the type of guy that would make you watch a couple different people play Hitler, and we would talk about who judged Hitler the most. Because
Did you do that in your class?
Yeah. But like that's just Bernard, you know? Yeah. That's just the type of guy that he was. That was because that's a really interesting acting conversation.
And hold on, and also kind of like yes, 100% yes. And funnily enough, how that ties into this film, was that whenever I think of like actors on screen playing Hitler, I think of, and I'm sure most people do too, Bruno Gonz. And Bruno Gonz was known for, hopefully I'm not wrong, please God, but he was Jewish. He passed away, I think, fairly recently.
Yes,
hated Hitler. I mean, obviously, why wouldn't he? You know, but he was that quintessential performer of Hitler, and you know, and it's beautiful because, to me, it's that final middle finger to him of the man portraying you is the man that like hates you the most, you know, and it's the man that you hate the most, you know, it's the kind of man. And then how that plays into this film is that
he was Hitler in Downfall in 2004.
Thank you.
He died in 2019.
Thank you. The man who plays Strasser in this film, and his name escapes me, was also Jewish, and he specifically carved his own lane of doing villains, these suave villains, and he hated them so much. He hated them so much because like he was from Germany as well, you know, and a lot of the Nazi actors in this movie are actually, excuse me, I'm so sorry, I hit your computer like a rude imbecile, were actually Jewish people who fled from Germany.
Yeah.
Which I think is just, I mean, it's beautiful in terms of just like that middle finger, but it's also
right. It's
poetic in a way. I'm not sure how to encapsulate it.
It's also one thing for Bruno to do it in Downfall in 2004.
Yeah. And then Veidt to do it in 1943 while the war is going
on. While
on.
Hitler is still alive.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. And while there are still lots of Nazis in the world winning a war.
Yeah.
That's, I mean.
But I think it also goes to show, like for those people in particular, how important doing that movie was to them, because, I mean, if it didn't beat you over the head, like, and I don't even mean this as an indictment, it's super duper, of course, anti-Nazi. And so, like, I think, like, but
how
like,
dare they be anti-Nazi?
The thing is, it's just like how you execute that well is going back to that Bernard conversation. You can't judge. When you are in those shoes portraying that character. You cannot judge.
You're right,
because then the entire sort of product suffers, and it doesn't have people walk away with the feeling or the emotion or the idea or the theme that you need them to walk away with.
Yeah.
You know, so it was super important to have Strasser in this movie to be a super duper uptight asshole and have sort of everyone by the chokehold, you know, but not super duper aggressive or anything, just somebody who knew he had the power in the room, so he felt like an actual fucking threat throughout the entirety of the film. It's someone who was just leering over Rick's shoulder for the entirety of it. There's this very loud noise that's happening.
Is that a helicopter?
I think it is. It's
Are we being abducted?
I hope not. What if it's a UFO, you know? But,
sounds like we're in Predator.
what the hell was that?
I don't know. That was just that was the noise to me.
The helicopter? Okay, very good. Thank you so much for sharing that. But I think, like, I don't know why I keep using the word beautiful, but I think it's poetic justice, I think is what I'm trying to get at, of like when these people like portray these roles and they portray them honestly, so that when we're watching it, we hate these people because they're doing such a good job that we're hating the characters and not the actual like performance that's happening in front of us.
Would you have had the guts to do this?
The guts I feel like, yeah, I mean, like, if the script is good, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But like,
so much of the time, if the script isn't good, then like you gotta have the wherewithal of like, I don't like, this is going to be lost in translation.
Sure.
Like, let's say there is a version of this movie that the script isn't good, you know, then like part of it, it would leave a bad taste in your mouth. Right. Imagine being a Jewish individual choosing to play as a Nazi and it was all for nothing. Mm-hmm. You know, where like, at least, you know, you have this sort of message that you're, you know, trying to put out there, and that message is sent and that message is received. Yeah. You know, but if that message is never really sent out there and is never at all received, then it's like, what was that experience? Because part of that experience is to what you're getting in return. Yeah. You know, right. It's a super tricky thing, and it's something that like a lot of artists have to negotiate and navigate when it comes to like roles they don't believe in at all. Yeah. But if it's in service of the storytelling, and if the story is good, and if it's directed well, and everybody around you is acting well as well, and everybody is on that same boat in terms of what you're trying to do on that stage or on that screen, then you can be in good hands, regardless of whatever crazy shit or inhumane anything you have to do. Yeah. That's my biggest takeaway.
Just a small aside. I said the phrase, because you said in service of the story, I said the phrase in service of the text once because that's Stan used to say that all the time. And I said it once, and Emma, my girlfriend, everyone on the podcast knows who Emma is. Emma, my girlfriend, she has never let me live that down, which we wouldn't think that would be something to live down, but she's like, that's the single most pretentious thing I've ever heard in my entire life, which I understand where she's coming from, but that makes a lot of sense in service of the text. But sorry,
in service of the story, not as pretentious.
True. You know? I'll use that one next time.
Well, because I mean, just looking at the linguistic nature of it, which is so boring to discuss, but I will leave it be shortly after this. That if you say in service of the text, then you're just strictly looking at, you know, words. The text on the page, right? Yeah. But as opposed to in service of the story, then it's like this big cohesive project that you're trying to put up, or at least that's how I view it.
This might be a tinge of Jewish angst, but I think that another thing that really helped Casablanca is that it wasn't a specifically Jewish story, but it was an anti-Nazi story. Although I don't think that's what the story was about. The story was not about sticking it to the Nazis. The story was about, you know, love and lost love and unfortunate love. But
like from that, doing the right thing,
right,
you know, and not losing our humanity.
Yeah,
you know, like not losing sight of what's actually important instead of being just cynical.
Ilsa and Rick are one of the most famous examples of a couple in cinematic history.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they're one of the only ones that don't end up together.
Yeah.
But
like,
it's
you see like flashback scenes, but I think but what makes that relationship so interesting is the growth of it post breakup, post Ilsa leaving him so many years prior.
But there are just so many stories that are that touch on like the Jewish experience, or especially the Jewish experience post-war time or mid-war time, that are kind of swept under the rug or that aren't really talked about all that much. Like Schindler's List is a huge example, fantastic. But at the same time, like the fact that most of Stan Lee's comics are like symbolic Jewish experiences. Like Peter Parker is supposed to comment on Judaism. Superman is supposed to be the symbolic Jew having to immigrate to America in the same way that he's like Superman's coming from another planet, and then all these people end up just being like regular white guys. I don't mean to sound angsty, but I'm really glad that this story has such a place in history and is anti-Nazi in the most important time to be anti-Nazi,
but to publicly
proclaim
make
it.
That choice,
that takes a lot of guts.
I mean, and it's like, well, what do you mean? It doesn't take a lot of guts to be like anti-Nazi. No. Like, it takes more guts to like willingly go to war, right?
Yeah.
And like go to war for the right thing, sure. But it's like go to war nonetheless.
Yeah.
Like we're like, if you're just strictly talking like fundamentally human lives that you're just putting out there, like that's not something to just like scoff at.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of money and resources. Funnily enough, got us out of the Great Depression, but like lives primarily, and families and people in this country being ruined because of it. Like that's what going to war does. But it's like making like that sort of like statement of like, no, but like even then, even with that, this is the right thing to do because this is bigger than us.
Yeah. And like I'm not trying to compare these two things because they are very separate. But like for instance, it did take a lot of guts for Seth Rogen and James Franco to make the interview about Kim Jong-un, knowing that Kim Jong-un was going to watch it and that Kim Jong-un was offended and ready to send missiles to America. I don't think they're the same thing, but that does take guts to look at a bad guy in real life and say fuck you via art. That's pretty cool. Yeah. But we'll start wrapping this one up. So, with my pick next week, we're going to watch a children's classic. Yep.
Okay.
Together we're going to watch Matilda, the movie.
We'll always have Paris. Oh, you like the voice crack?
Oh, we'll always have Paris. Thank you.